The Mount Washington Cog Railway, as you see here, was originally conceived of by a man by the name of Sylvester Marsh, who was a New Hampshire native. He had made his fortune early on by inventing a way of drying grain, feed grain and corn, which made the feedlots possible in Chicago. And by the time he was 50, he was very, very rich. He came back to New Hampshire to retire. And one day in the late 1850s, he and some friends were hiking up Mount Washington from this side of the mountain, and they got caught in a severe storm. And during that period of time, they weren't sure if they're really going to make it to the summit or not. And so he started to think about a better way of going up the mountain other than going up by foot. So he conceived of this, of a cog railway going right up the side of a mountain. Being a railway, he had to go to the state of New Hampshire to get a railroad charter. So he applied in Concord, and of course had to go through the state legislature, and of course at the time he was ridiculed for such a crazy idea. But nevertheless, he did get that charter. So then the Civil War intervened, so he was not able to build it right away. He had to wait till the end of the Civil War. And at that time, he designed the old pepper sass, which is the #1 right over there in that pedestal. That was the first engine that was designed and built specifically for this rail. And it was used to construct it. Again, at that time it burned wood, not coal. So he started in the spring of 1866 laying out the track here, and by July 3rd, 1869, they were carrying their first passengers right to the summit of Mount Washington. And it's been in operation continuously since then, with the exception of a couple of years where they had to shut down for World War II because of a lack of manpower and materials and fuel and that type of thing. People ask whether this is state-owned or federally owned. It isn't. It's privately owned, and it's a self-sustaining business, profit-making business, and it always has been, and it probably always will be. Again, a lot of people are under the mistaken notion that we're on a right-of-way in the National Forest, and we are not on a right-of-way. We actually own a piece of land that's 99 feet wide. It's about 3 miles long. It's a strip of land that goes all the way up to the summit. And again, people ask, why is that? Why isn't it part of the National Forest? When the Weeks Act was enacted in 1911 that established the National Forest System, railroad property was exempt from seizure by the federal government, but through eminent domain. So everything was taken but this railway. So even to this day, it is still private. Original engine pepper sass, again, it was very, very small, very little horsepower. And when they started running passengers up the mountain, they very soon became a need for a much more powerful engine. So Sylvester Marsh went to the Aikens down in Franklin, New Hampshire, to design them a more robust, powerful engines. And they had a whole series of engines that were experimental that all featured a vertical boiler like pepper sass. And they all improved the operation by varying degrees, but it wasn't until about 1883 that they finally settled on what you see today with the horizontal boiler, and they pretty much did away with the vertical boiler configuration. And that horizontal boiler configuration has been used, and is still being used here today on our steam engines. We have 3 operating steam engines right now that we do run on schedule. Starting in 2006, we designed diesel engine. We've designed it right here, and the first one was put in operation in May of 2008. Winter of 2008, we built 2 more, and they went into operation in June of 2009. And last winter, 2009-2010, we built the 4th one, and that just went into operation 3 weeks ago. say why diesel? Well, there's a lot of reasons. First of all, primarily it's to contain costs. There's nothing more expensive to run and maintain than a steam locomotive. They're very, very expensive. And it goes beyond just the mechanical parts. The boiler inspection procedure and repair is extremely expensive. And as the years go by, there are fewer and fewer people that are really interested in the steam. So the intent of the owners here is to do the heavy lifting, if you will, and bring the money in with these diesels, and in their own peculiar sort of way, it allows the owners with that revenue stream to keep the steam going, even if it's at a loss. We have had a lot of steam people that are really fearful that this is the end of steam, but I like to think maybe in its own peculiar way it will preserve steam. Now, by the way, right now you're at 2,700 feet above sea level, and just speaking of grade in general, right now you're at 2,700 feet above sea level. The summit is at 6,288, and the track is 2 3/4 miles long. So essentially you're gaining 3,500 feet in 2 3/4 miles. The overall average grade is about 25%. And to put it in perspective, the average grade of the auto road is about 12%. So it's pretty steep. And it's actually the second steepest Cog Railway grade in the world. There is one on Pilatus in Switzerland that is steeper. And of course, when the Swiss come here, they have to remind us of that fact. But then I always tell them that we're still the oldest, and we can make ours steeper anytime we want. But they can't be the first. Jacob's Ladder is our steepest grade here. It's got a grade of 37.41%. In parts of it, it's on a trestle. The trestle is about 30 feet off the ground, and it's got a 30-degree curve in it. So it's very steep, and some people don't like heights. It can be a little intimidating, but other than that, it's very well named. We have a switch down here at the base. It's a platform switch. It's not a typical switch. We designed that here in 2002. And again, it's designed that way so that we can switch the rack as well as the rails. And on the steam engines, there is a spur gear. That's a reduction gear on the engineer's side of the engine that projects below the head of the rail. So we had to have a path for that. So we settled on this. Now there's two more of these switches about a third of the way up, where we've made actually what we call the passing loop, which is a parallel track. It's 2,200 feet long, and it allows trains to pass. Like the upcoming train, the upgoing train, the downcoming train can pass without anybody stopping, and that's helped our schedule a lot.
Pictures, people taking pictures of people taking pictures. Yeah.
Right at the ridge, you might be able to see up there, it's called Skyline Switch, and that's still the last remaining hand-thrown switch. That's got 9 moving parts, and it takes a little bit to throw it. We're keeping that primarily for track maintenance right now. There's talk about replacing it with one of these single-piece switches in the future. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. Okay, well, this water tower back there is used, of course, to fill the tenders on the steam engines. And even though it looks like it's probably been here forever, it was moved here back about 7 or 8 years ago from Littleton, New Hampshire. Originally, it was, I believe, a Boston and Maine water tower that it was just abandoned after the conversion from steam to diesel on that line. And we acquired that and brought it, and took it all apart, moved it here and reassembled it. But again, it's all made out of cypress, which is very good for lasting when it's submerged in water. And we found out of all those pieces, they're all like little barrel slats, we only found 4 that had any rot. And we replaced them with cedar since we couldn't get cypress easily. Yeah. But yeah, and it works real well because we have a lot of people that say, my God, we're wasting a lot of water. You see all that water dribbling out. That's overflow. But actually, though, we're taking water out of the Ammonoosuc, just up into the woods here. We have a dam. So the water's coming down, fills the pipe, fills that tank. When the tank's full, the water runs out. And it's going back into the river, which is right behind the tank. So we're really not wasting water at all. This is the headwaters of the Ammonoosuc, and actually it begins at Lake of the Clouds Hut. There's 2 lakes up there called Lakes of the Clouds. They're the 2 highest natural bodies of water east of the Mississippi. And they're the headwaters of the Ammonoosuc. There's Lake of the Clouds Hut. That's a hiker hostel that's operated by the Appalachian Mountain Club. And it's one of several huts that are right along the Appalachian Trail. That particular hut is the largest of the system. It'll sleep 90 people, and it's known by some as Lake of the Crowds because it tends to be very, very popular in the summer. Down at the base here, we have what's called Marshfield Station. That's where we're headquartered. This is not the first or the original base station by any means. There's been a series of them over the past. This one was built by 1990. And in Marshfield Station we have the offices, ticket office, we have a gift shop and a cafeteria. We have a museum that's free, it's open to the public. And the summit is, more than half of the summit is state park. It originally was owned entirely by the Cog Railway, but in the 1940s, a good part of it was donated to the state as a state park. So the land that our tracks are on is still owned by the railway, but the rest of the summit again is state property. And on that property, they have the Tip Top House, which is like an 1850s vintage hostel, if you will, or accommodations. And then there's a larger concrete building that, again, is state-owned and has a cafeteria, gift shop, weather observatory, and such at the summit. We only operate here from May through the end of November because of the weather considerations. Back about 45 years ago, we tried a ski train that went up to the tree line. And it was very expensive to maintain, especially keeping the track open in the winter. And most people that came weren't skiers, they were just lookers. So after the first couple of years, we dispensed with the ski part of the ski train. We still did run a train for a couple of years in the winter, just to bring people up to the tree line. But again, the income just did not offset the cost. At least it didn't with the steam engines. maybe we'll do it again someday with the diesels. Who knows? Right. Well, right now we're running from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, every hour on the hour. It takes us, with the diesels, we would make the summit in about 40 minutes. And then we give people an hour at the summit, and then they'll come back down. So it's about a 2.5 hour round trip. On the steam engine, it's more like 50 minutes to an hour to the summit, and about the same coming down. They're a little slower. As soon as the train goes up, people get off, and the people that were left there the previous hour jump on. So it's more of a transportation mode than it is a tourist mode. People can stay longer if they want, but then again, we seat the people who are assigned to that train first, and then the stragglers take what's left. With these diesels now, they're so cheap to run. In comparison, we'll run an empty train at the end of the day to pick up the stragglers, if needs be. Since this is a tourist railroad, and people come up here for the mountain, the weather pretty much dictates that. Because right now we're in a high season, and well, actually last week I'd say, and then Labor Day, and then after Labor Day everything gets real mellow here. We get into our tour bus schedule. We get a lot of retired people from all over the country and actually Europe, and they tend to be more relaxed.
Yeah.
They're not on the schedule. They don't have the screaming kids in the back seat and all that. And so we're gonna have about 3 weeks of nice mellow operation here. And then right around when the foliage changes, we'll have about 2 weeks where we really get pounded again.
The magnificent Mount Washington Hotel was constructed in 1902 by 250 Italian artisans. The Cog Railway started carrying passengers in 1869, 33 years before the hotel was built. The White Mountains of New Hampshire became a destination for visitors from the big cities to the south, Boston, New York, and Washington. As the region's popularity grew, the Concord and Montreal Railroad laid tracks to the base of Mount Washington. United States presidents and foreign diplomats came to the region for conferences and tourist visits. President Ulysses S. Grant and his family rode on the Cog Railway in its early years. During the early days of the Cog Railway, workers developed a unique way to come down the mountain after a day's work. They created a slide board known as the Devil's Shingle. Each slide board was a little different because they were made by the individuals who used them. The slide board was a simple device with a very basic braking system which allowed the riders some control over the speed. The Devil's Shingle was a useful tool to get down the mountain quickly at the end of the day. For a short time, a newspaper was published at the top of the mountain called Among the Clouds. Copies of the paper were transported down the mountain by people using slide boards. Eventually, thrill seekers were also able to use the slide board. The practice was discontinued after an individual was killed. One of the adventure seekers slid down the 3 miles of track in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Doing the math, it appears he must have been traveling at an average speed of 60 miles an hour. The Environmental Council of the states had a meeting in New Hampshire. While in New Hampshire, they took advantage of the opportunity to travel to the top of Mount Washington. About 50 members and their guests chartered 3 Mount Washington Railway coaches and took a trip to the top. Members of the council are from each of the United States and from several territories. The Environmental Council of the States is a nonprofit and nonpartisan association which helps improve the capability of individual state environmental agencies to protect the environment of those states. The council was established in 1993 and has been active in providing help for state leaders to improve citizen health through sharing ideas and research. We would like to thank the management and staff of the Mount Washington Railway for their help in making this presentation possible. We hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you for watching.